The CEO's eyes were closed, but she wasn't sleeping. Evelyn Harper had built a billion-dollar empire by watching people when they thought no one was looking. Tonight, alone in the glass tower that bore her company's name, she wanted to know what kind of man worked in the shadows of her success. The night janitor entered at 2:47 a.m., pushing his cart with the careful quiet of someone used to being invisible. He didn't know she was testing him. He didn't know that in 60 seconds he would say something that would unravel everything she thought she understood about power, protection, and the promises we make to the dead. If you want to see how a single moment of kindness can expose a company's darkest secrets, stay with me until the end. And when you do, hit that like button and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The 53rd floor of Harper Industries never slept, but at this hour it pretended to. Evelyn Harper sat motionless in the leather chair of Conference Room C, her breathing deliberately slow, her posture carefully arranged to suggest exhaustion rather than observation. Through her barely closed eyelids, she watched the reflection in the darkened window, waiting. She had learned this trick from her father, the man who had built this company from nothing, and taught her that true character only revealed itself when people believed they were alone. Board members who smiled in daylight meetings showed their real faces in empty hallways. Executives who praised collaboration sabotaged rivals when the lights went down. And Evelyn, who had spent 15 years climbing from junior analyst to CEO, had made it her business to know exactly who people were when the performance ended. Tonight, she was testing the night janitor. His name was Noah Brooks, according to the employee database. 34 years old, employed for 8 months, consistently punctual, no disciplinary issues, the kind of anonymous efficiency that corporate systems loved and corporate leadership ignored. She had never spoken to him, had never really looked at him until last week when her head of security mentioned something unusual. The night janitor on 53 asked about the mechanical room access logs Tom Reeves had said during their weekly briefing. Wanted to know why certain systems were running during off hours when the floors were supposed to be empty. Most CEOs would have dismissed it. Evelyn had built her career on not dismissing anything. "What did you tell him?" she had asked. That it wasn't his concern that he should focus on his job. And did he? Tom had hesitated. He did his job, but he kept looking. Not in a suspicious way, more like concern. Concern. The word had stayed with her for 3 days. In a building full of people paid to care about quarterly earnings and shareholder value, the janitor was concerned about systems running in empty spaces. It was either remarkably naive or remarkably observant. Evelyn needed to know which. So tonight, she had stayed late, dismissed her assistant, turned off most of the lights, positioned herself in the conference room with the glass walls where anyone passing by could see her, and she had waited. The soft squeak of cartwheels announced his arrival at 2:47 a.m., exactly on schedule. Evelyn controlled her breathing, kept her face relaxed, her body still. Through the reflection, she watched him approach. Noah Brooks moved with the economical grace of someone who had learned to navigate spaces without disturbing them. He was tall, lean, with dark hair that needed cutting, and the kind of weathered hands that came from years of physical work. His uniform was clean but worn, the Harper Industries logo fading on the pocket. He pushed his cart with one hand, the other holding a spray bottle with the casual competence of long practice. He paused outside the conference room. Noticing her through the glass wall, Evelyn watched his reflection as he stood there perfectly still, deciding what to do. The easy choice would be to move on, come back later when the room was empty. That was what most people would do. Avoid the complication of a sleeping executive. Instead, he carefully opened the door. The quiet click of the latch seemed loud in the silence. Noah entered slowly, his movements even more careful now, clearly trying not to wake her. Evelyn maintained her facade of sleep, tracking his approach through the window's reflection and the subtle awareness of his presence in the room. He didn't start cleaning immediately. She heard him set down the spray bottle, heard the soft rustle of fabric. Then she felt it, the weight of something being draped gently across her shoulders. A jacket. His jacket, his worn denim still warm from his body, smelling faintly of laundry detergent and clean work. What happened next, Evelyn would remember for the rest of her life. Noah's voice barely above a whisper, so quiet she almost missed it. "I'm sorry I couldn't keep her warm. But I can keep you warm, I promise." No one should be alone in the cold. Not again. Never again. The words hit her like a physical blow. There was something in his tone, not madness, not confusion, but a grief so deep and so carefully controlled that it had transformed into an iron vow. He wasn't talking to her. He was talking to someone who wasn't there, someone he had failed to protect. Evelyn's carefully maintained composure nearly cracked. She wanted to open her eyes, wanted to demand an explanation, wanted to understand what tragedy had carved that kind of promise into a man's soul. But she held still, barely breathing, as Noah moved away. She heard him cleaning the soft spray of solution, the gentle wipe of cloth on glass, the careful attention to detail that suggested he took pride in work that most people considered beneath notice. He worked around her without making a sound, treating her presence with a respect that felt almost protective. 15 minutes later, he was gone. The conference room gleamed. The jacket remained on her shoulders. Evelyn sat up slowly, her heart beating harder than it had during any hostile takeover negotiation. She pulled the jacket closer, feeling the worn fabric, the weight of it, the lingering warmth. In the pocket, she found a small photograph bent at the corners, a woman with kind eyes and a little girl with ribbons in her hair. On the back, written in careful print, Emma and Lily Maine, 2019, 5 years ago. Evelyn stared at the photo, at the woman who was clearly gone, at the child who would be older now, and something shifted in her chest, something uncomfortable and unfamiliar. She had built her empire on reading people, on understanding motivation, on knowing exactly what drove human behavior. She understood greed, she understood ambition, she understood fear and pride and the desperate hunger for success. But this quiet vow to a ghost, this promise to protect strangers from a cold he couldn't protect someone else from, this she didn't understand at all. Evelyn stood still holding the jacket and walked to the window. Below, the city sprawled in a carpet of lights. Millions of people living, millions of stories she would never know. Somewhere down there, Noah Brooks was probably heading home to his daughter, carrying the weight of a promise that seemed to govern his entire life. And up here in her glass tower, Evelyn realized she had just discovered something far more valuable than efficiency ratings or clean floors. She had discovered someone who still believed in promises. The next morning, Evelyn called her head of security into her office. Tom Reeves arrived promptly at 8, his expression already guarded. He knew that tone in her voice, the one that meant something, had shifted in the careful equilibrium of Harper Industries. "Tell me about Noah Brooks," Evelyn said without preamble. Tom's eyebrows rose slightly. "The janitor? What about him?" "Everything. Where he came from, why he's here, what he was before this. With respect, Miss Harper, he's a night janitor. His background check was clean. He does his job. That's all we need to know." "No," Evelyn said quietly. "That's all we bothered to know. There's a difference." She watched Tom process this, saw the moment he decided to take her seriously. He pulled out his phone, accessing files. "Noah Brooks hired 8 months ago through the standard service company we contract with. Previous employment was, let me see, construction work in Maine, some automotive repair, general maintenance, no college degree, references checked out. Lives in a rent-controlled apartment in Queens, with his 6-year-old daughter, single father, wife deceased. How did she die?" Tom looked up, surprised by the question. "I don't have that information. We don't typically find out." "Miss Harper, I'm not sure this is Tom." Evelyn's voice carried the steel that had made her famous in boardrooms across 3 continents. "When I ask you to find something out, I'm not requesting your opinion on whether it's relevant. I'm telling you to do it." "Yes, ma'am." After he left, Evelyn sat alone in her office, Noah's jacket folded carefully on the chair beside her desk. She had meant to return it immediately, had meant to summon him up here, hand it back with a polite thanks, maintain the proper distance between executive and employee, but something stopped her. The photograph in the pocket, the promise whispered in the dark, the question of what kin. Of man made a vow like that and actually meant it. Her phone buzzed. Marcus Chen, her CFO, reminding her about the merger meeting at 10 o'clock. The Titan acquisition was entering its final phase, a $3.20 $2 billion deal that would double Harper Industries' market share and cement her reputation as one of the most successful CEOs of her generation. Evelyn had spent 18 months engineering this merger, had outmaneuvered 3 competitor bids, had negotiated terms that would make her board members weep with joy when the announcement went public next month. But as she prepared for the meeting, gathering files and financial projections, she kept thinking about the janitor who noticed systems running in empty spaces, about the kind of attention to detail that came from actually caring about what happened in the dark. The merger meeting lasted 4 hours. Lawyers and accountants filled 2 conference rooms, reviewing final documentation, confirming compliance standards, ensuring every clause of the agreement was ironclad. Evelyn presided over it all with her usual precision, catching discrepancies that others missed, pushing back on language that seemed too vague, demanding clarity where others were willing to accept ambiguity. "You're in rare form today," Marcus murmured during a brief break, even more detail-oriented than usual. "What's got you so focused?" Evelyn considered the question. "Just making sure we're not missing anything important." "We're not. I've triple-checked everything. This deal is clean, then we have nothing to worry about." But as the meeting concluded, as everyone congratulated themselves on the impending success, Evelyn found herself thinking about Noah's question to security, about systems running when buildings should be empty, about the things people noticed when they weren't blinded by the promise of profit. That night, she stayed late again. Same conference room, same carefully arranged posture of sleep, same test. Noah arrived at 2:48 a.m., 1 minute later than the previous night. He paused when he saw her in the same position, same chair, and something flickered across his face. Not suspicion, exactly, but awareness, the kind of recognition that came from being observant. He entered the room anyway, moved to his cart, pulled out another jacket, different from yesterday's, a worn hoodie this time, and draped it gently across her shoulders. "I know you're probably not cold," he whispered to the empty room. "But just in case you need someone to notice. I notice. I promise." Then he did something that made Evelyn's breath catch. He walked to the far window, the one that overlooked the mechanical systems on the roof of the building's lower section. He stood there for a long moment, staring down at something she couldn't see from her position. "The auxiliary power's running again," he said softly, still talking to himself or to ghosts. "Third night this week. Nobody's supposed to be here. But something's running. Something's using power nobody's accounting for." He stood there for another minute, then shook his head slightly and returned to cleaning. When he finished, he left as quietly as he had come, the hoodie still warm on Evelyn's shoulders. This time, when she sat up, Evelyn didn't just examine what he'd left behind. She walked to the window where he had stood and looked down at the mechanical systems below. Everything appeared normal, clean lines of ventilation units, power distribution boxes, the standard infrastructure of a modern office building. But as she watched, she noticed something, a faint shimmer in the air above one section, barely visible against the night sky, heat rising from system that should have been in standby mode. Evelyn pulled out her phone and called Tom Reeves directly. "I need the where usage reports for building mechanicals," she said when he answered. "Everything from the past 6 months. It's 11 at night, Miss Harper. Then you have until morning to get them to me." She heard him sigh, accepting the inevitable. "What exactly am I looking for? Discrepancies, usage that doesn't match occupancy patterns, systems running when they shouldn't be." "That's a pretty broad tom." The janitor noticed something. "I want to know what." There was a long pause. "You're taking operational cues from the night cleaning staff now." "I'm taking cues from someone who pays attention when everyone else is looking the other way. There's a difference." The reports arrived at 7 a.m., delivered by a blare-eyed Tom who had clearly been up all night compiling data. Evelyn spread them across her desk, comparing power usage against occupancy schedules, against work orders, against the building's automated systems. At first, nothing looked unusual. Normal fluctuations, expected variance, the kind of minor discrepancies that existed in any large building. But then she noticed a pattern. Every Tuesday and Thursday night between midnight and 4 a.m., power usage on floors 48 through 51 spiked by nearly 30%. Not enough to trigger alarms, not enough to seem suspicious if you weren't looking for it, but consistent, regular, deliberate. "What's on those floors?" she asked Tom. 48 is mostly storage and auxiliary server space. 49 and 50 are being renovated for the post-merger expansion. 51 is mechanical and building systems. Who has access? During the day, construction crews for the renovation. At night, just security and maintenance. And what would cause a 30% power spike? Tom frowned, studying the reports. Running some kind of equipment, heavy processing, climate control for something temperature sensitive. I'd need to do a physical inspection to know for sure. Then do one. Miss Harper, I appreciate your concern, but a janitor noticing some lights on doesn't necessarily mean it's not about the lights, Tom. It's about someone caring enough to notice what everyone else ignores. When was the last time anyone on our executive team walked those floors? When was the last time anyone asked why systems were running in supposedly empty spaces? Tom had no answer. Schedule the inspection for tonight, Evelyn said. After hours. I want to know what's happening in my building when everyone thinks no one's watching. At 11 p.m. that night, Evelyn stood in the lobby of the 48th floor with Tom and two building engineers. She was dressed casually for the first time in years. Jeans, a sweater, practical shoes, no corporate armor, just a woman who wanted to understand the truth. Let's start with the server room, Tom said, leading them down the hall. The auxiliary server space was supposed to be in minimal operation mode. Basic systems, backup storage, equipment that ran quietly in the background, supporting the more critical systems upstairs. But when they opened the door, the temperature hit them like a wave. That's not normal, one of the engineers said immediately. The room was significantly warmer than it should have been. Not dangerously hot, but working hard hot. The engineers moved quickly to the monitoring stations, pulling up system data, checking loads and processes. Someone's running distributed processing, the lead engineer said, her voice tight. Heavy computation across multiple systems. This isn't backup storage. This is active work. What kind of work? Evelyn asked. I'd need to dig into the code to know for sure, but based on the resource allocation, modeling, maybe simulation, something that requires serious processing power. Tom was already on his phone pulling up access logs. According to the system, nobody's been in this room for 3 weeks. Last authorized ent. RI was a routine maintenance check. Then someone has unauthorized access, Evelyn said quietly. They moved through the floors methodically. 49 revealed construction areas that looked normal. Renovation in progress, tools secured, materials staged properly. But in the back corner, behind a wall of plastic sheeting marked for demolition, they found another space that shouldn't exist. It was small, maybe 12x12, and it had been converted into a makeshift office. Desk, computer equipment, a small refrigerator, a cot. Someone had been working here, living here maybe. Check the computer, Evelyn said. The engineer booted up the system while Tom searched the desk. What they found made Evelyn's blood run cold. Financial models, projection documents, merger analysis for the Titan acquisition, but not the official versions. These were different. Altered numbers, modified projections, adjusted risk assessments. Someone had been creating a parallel set of documentation. This is fraud, Tom said flatly. Someone's cooking the books on the merger. Evelyn picked up a folder from the desk. Inside were internal memos, confidential communications, strategic planning documents that should have been secured behind multiple layers of corporate security. Someone had access to everything, had been collecting intelligence for months. Pull the security footage, she said. I want to know who's been on these floors. While Tom coordinated with security, Evelyn stood in the hidden office and felt the careful architecture of her merger beginning to collapse. Titan Industries was a publicly traded company. If these altered projections went public, if someone had been manipulating the data that both boards had relied on to approve the deal, the legal consequences would be catastrophic. But worse than that, far worse, was the realization that someone inside Harper Industries, someone she trusted, was orchestrating this deception, Ms. Harper. Tom's voice was strained. You need to see this. She joined him at the security station they'd set up in the hallway. The footage showed a familiar figure entering the hidden office at various times over the past 6 months. David Morrison, her head of financial operations, the man who had helped structure the Titan deal, the man who had access to every confidential document related to the merger. Pull up everything on Morrison, Evelyn said, her voice ice cold. Bank records, communications, travel history, everything. As Tom worked, Evelyn walked to the window and looked out at the city. Somewhere down there, Noah Brooks was probably cleaning another building, making another quiet promise to protect people from cold and loneliness. a janitor who noticed things, who cared about systems running in empty spaces. While up here, the executives who were supposed to be watching had missed everything. Her phone buzzed. Marcus Chen asking about final merger preparations. Evelyn stared at the message for a long moment, then made a decision that would change everything. She called an emergency board meeting for the next morning. At 6 a.m., Evelyn stood in the main boardroom facing 17 people who controlled the future of Harper Industries. She had spent the night gathering evidence, building her case, preparing for the fight of her career. "We have a problem," she said without preamble. "Someone has been manipulating the Titan merger from the inside." The room erupted. Questions, denials, demands for proof. Evelyn let them react, then presented everything. The hidden office, the altered documents, the security footage, the financial trail that showed David Morrison receiving payments from a shell company connected to Titan's primary competitor. "Morrison has been feeding confidential information to Vanguard Holdings," she explained. "They're planning to launch a hostile takeover of Titan the moment our merger goes public. The altered projections would have made Titan appear more valuable than it actually is, inflating our purchase price and weakening our position when Vanguard strikes." "How did you discover this?" asked Robert Chen, the board chairman. Evelyn paused, considering how to answer. A janitor noticed that systems were running in empty spaces. He asked questions. I decided to find out why. The room went silent. "A janitor?" Robert repeated slowly. "Yes. While we were focused on quarterly projections and shareholder value, someone who actually works in this building, who sees it every day, noticed something wrong. And instead of ignoring it, instead of deciding it wasn't his concern, he kept paying attention." "Where's Morrison now?" someone asked. "Security is bringing him in as we speak." The door opened. David Morrison entered, flanked by 2 security officers. He was perfectly composed, his suit immaculate, his expression confident. He looked at Evelyn with something close to pity. "Really, Evelyn? This is what you're going with? Conspiracy theories from the cleaning staff? Sit down, David. I don't think so. You're making accusations you can't possibly prove. You think finding some old files in a construction zone is evidence. You think we have your communications with Vanguard Holdings." Evelyn said quietly. "We have financial records showing payments to your offshore accounts. We have security footage of you accessing confidential systems. We have everything, David. The only question now is whether you cooperate with the internal investigation, or whether we hand everything directly to the federal prosecutors." Morrison's confidence cracked just slightly, just enough to reveal the calculation beneath. He looked around the boardroom, measuring his options, and apparently decided that defiance would serve him better than confession. "You're destroying a $3 billion deal based on paranoia," he said. "The board won't support this." "The board will support the truth," Robert Chen said firmly, "even when it's expensive. Especially when it's expensive," Evelyn added, "because that's what integrity costs. That's what honest leadership requires. And if we're not willing to pay that price, we don't deserve to be in this room." She looked at Morrison with something close to sadness. "I trusted you. We all did. And you were willing to burn down everything we built for money. You have no idea what you're walking away from." Morrison said, "Titan is worth the investment. Even with Vanguard's interference, even with the complications, the long-term value is meaningless if it's built on fraud." Evelyn interrupted. "We're done here. Security, please escort Mr. Morrison out. Tom, contact our legal counsel. I want a full forensic audit started immediately." As Morrison was led away, still protesting, the board members sat in stunned silence. Finally, Robert spoke. "What happens to the merger?" "We kill it," Evelyn said, publicly, immediately, with full disclosure about why. "We take the hit to our stock price. We accept the consequences and we rebuild with the truth. That's going to cost us billions, yes. Shareholders are going to revolt, probably. You could lose your job over this." Evelyn smiled grimly. "Then I lose my job. But I won't lose the ability to look at myself in the mirror. And I won't build this company's future on lies, no matter how profitable they might be." The vote was close, 10-7, with Robert casting the deciding vote in Evelyn's favor. By noon, the merger cancellation was public. By evening, Harper Industries stock had dropped 18%. By midnight, Evelyn had received calls from 3 major shareholders demanding her resignation. She ignored them all and went to find the janitor who had saved her company. Up, Noah was cleaning the executive bathroom on the 32nd floor when Evelyn found him at 1 a.m. He looked up surprised and she saw him recognize her for the first time, not as a sleeping figure in a conference room, but as the person who actually ran this building. "Miss Harper," he said, straightening, "is something wrong?" I need to thank you," Evelyn said, "and I need to understand something." She held out his jackets, the denim one and the hoodie, both cleaned and carefully folded. "You left these with me twice." Noah's face went still. "I didn't know you were awake. I wasn't asleep either time. I was testing you." He absorbed this without visible reaction. But something in his eyes shifted. "Testing me for what?" "To see who you are when you think no one's watching. To understand what kind of person makes a promise like the one you made." "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do." Evelyn's voice was gentle. "You promised someone you'd never let anyone be alone in the cold again. You promised you'd keep people warm. And you've been keeping that promise every night, haven't you? Not just with jackets, with attention, with caring about the details everyone else ignores." Noah took the jacket slowly, his hands careful on the fabric. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but steady. "My wife died 3 years ago. Winter night. Car accident on an icy road. She was alone, cold, and I wasn't there. I was working late, trying to earn overtime, trying to provide, and she died alone. I'm so sorry. I made a promise at her funeral, in front of my daughter, in front of everyone, that I would never let that happen again. That if I saw someone who needed warmth, who needed someone to notice them, I would be there, no matter what. That's why you asked about the power usage." Noah nodded. "Systems running in empty buildings mean someone's there. Someone's working late or living in places they shouldn't be or doing things that require hiding. And I couldn't just ignore it. I couldn't walk past and pretend I didn't see. Not anymore." Evelyn felt something break open in her chest. Something that had been locked away for years beneath ambition and professional distance. "You saved this company. You know that, right? Your questions, your attention to what others missed. You uncovered a fraud that would have destroyed us. I was just doing my job." "No," Evelyn said firmly. "You were doing far more than your job. You were keeping a promise, and because of that promise, because you chose to care, when you could have chosen to look away, everything changed." They stood together in the quiet hallway, the CEO and the janitor, separated by every measure of corporate hierarchy, but connected by something deeper, the recognition of what it meant to truly see people, to actually notice when things were wrong, to choose truth over convenience. "I have a question for you," Evelyn said, "and I need you to answer honestly." "All right. If I asked you to help me make sure this never happens again, if I asked you to be part of the team that actually watches over this company, that pays attention to the details, that cares about what happens in the shadows, would you do it?" Noah looked at her steadily. "What exactly are you offering?" "Honestly, I don't know yet, but I know that the people I've been relying on to keep this company safe missed everything that mattered. And the person who noticed, who cared enough to ask questions, was someone everyone else treated as invisible. That needs to change. You need to not be invisible anymore. M. Harper, I'm a janitor. I don't have a degree. I don't have corporate experience. I have a 6-year-old daughter who needs me home every morning. I'm not asking you to be something you're not. I'm asking you to be exactly who you are. Someone who keeps promises, who notices things, who cares about people being left alone in the cold. Whatever shape that takes, whatever role makes sense. I need that quality in this company because right now we're very good at profit margins and very bad at seeing what's actually happening in our own building." Noah was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something that made Evelyn's throat tighten. "My daughter drew a picture last week of the building where Daddy works. She drew it tall and shiny with windows like stars. She said it looked like a place where important things happen. And I realized she thinks my work matters. Not because she understands what I do, but because she knows I care about doing it right." He met Evelyn's eyes. "If I said yes to whatever you're proposing, it can't be about titles or offices or becoming someone different. It has to be about making sure that caring about doing things right actually means something here. That noticing when things are wrong is valued, not ignored. Can you promise that?" Evelyn thought about the board meeting, about the billions of dollars she had just walked away from, about the shareholders calling for her resignation, about the cost of choosing truth over profit. "I can promise to try," she said. And I can promise that I won't ask you to compromise what makes you who you are. The promise you made to your wife. That matters more than any corporate objective. And if we can build something here that honors that kind of promise, maybe we'll actually deserve the success we're chasing." Noah considered this. Then slowly he held out his hand. "Then yes, I'll help, whatever that looks like." They shook hands there in the quiet hallway, sealing an agreement that neither of them fully understood yet, but both recognized as important, as necessary as the beginning of something that might truly matter. When Noah left to continue his rounds, Evelyn stood alone in the corridor and felt the weight of what she had just done. She had exposed the fraud, had killed the merger, had probably destroyed her own career in the process. But she had also kept a different kind of promise. The one her father had taught her about knowing who people really were, about watching when others weren't watching, about understanding that true character revealed itself in small moments, in quiet choices, in the promises people kept when no one was forcing them to. The janitor who gave his jacket to strangers, the CEO who chose truth over billions. And somewhere between those two positions, maybe there was a way forward that actually meant something. The glass tower stood silent around her, waiting to see what happened next. The morning after their conversation, Evelyn arrived at her office to find a handwritten note slipped under her door. The paper was cheap, the kind that came from a corner bodega, and the handwriting was careful, practiced, like someone who had learned to write neatly because messy writing meant miscommunication on job sites. "Ms. Harper, my daughter asked me last night why I came home smiling. I told her I met someone who thinks noticing things matters. She said that's what heroes do in her storybooks. I'm not a hero, but I'll do my best not to let you down. Noah Brooks." Evelyn read it 3 times, then folded it carefully and placed it in her desk drawer. She had dismantled a $3 billion fraud in the past 24 hours, had watched her stock price plummet, had fielded angry calls from shareholders who thought she had lost her mind. But this note, written on cheap paper by a janitor who thought being noticed mattered, felt more valuable than any of it. Her assistant Jennifer appeared in the doorway looking worried. "The Wall Street Journal is calling. Bloomberg want essay statement and Mr. Chen needs to see you immediately. Tell them I'll release a statement this afternoon and send Marcus in." Her CFO entered looking like he hadn't slept. Marcus Chen had worked with Evelyn for 8 years, had helped engineer the Titan deal from the beginning, and his expression now carried the weight of watching 18 months of work collapse overnight. "The board is in chaos," he said without preamble. "Half of them want your resignation. The other half want explanations for why you torpedoed the biggest deal in company history based on evidence from a janitor. The evidence was solid, Marcus. You saw it yourself. I saw altered documents in a construction zone and security footage that could be interpreted multiple ways. What I didn't see was enough justification for destroying shareholder value." Evelyn leaned back in her chair, studying the man who had been her closest ally for nearly a decade. "You think I made the wrong call. I think you made an emotional call. I think you let one employee's suspicions override months of due diligence and professional analysis. And I think we're going to pay for it. We were already paying for it, we just didn't know the bill was coming." Marcus shook his head. "Morrison's lawyer is claiming entrapment. Says the hidden office was a personal workspace he used for legitimate analysis. Says the payments from the shell company were consulting fees for unrelated projects. Says we have no actual proof of fraud, just circumstantial evidence and assumptions. What about the communications with Vanguard? His lawyer claims they were exploratory discussions about potential future opportunities. Not illegal, not even unethical, unless you can prove active coordination to undermine our merger." Evelyn felt her jaw tighten. "You've talked to his lawyer already." "His lawyer called me this morning, wanted to know if I'd be willing to test. Iffy. That Morrison's analysis was within normal parameters of financial modeling. And what did you tell him?" Marcus met her eyes. "I told him I needed to review the evidence more carefully before making any statements, which is what you should have done before blowing up a $3 billion deal." The words hung between them like a challenge. Evelyn recognized the moment for what it was. Marcus choosing sides, measuring loyalties, deciding whether to stand with her or position himself for whatever came next. "I need to know something," she said quietly. "When you reviewed Morrison's analysis for the Titan deal, did anything seem unusual? Any numbers that didn't quite add up? Any projections that felt optimistic beyond what the data supported?" Marcus hesitated, and in that hesitation, Evelyn saw the truth. He had noticed something. had chosen to overlook it because the deal was too important, the opportunity too valuable, the pressure to succeed too intense. There were some aggressive assumptions, he admitted finally, but nothing that fell outside acceptable modeling parameters. Nothing that would have raised red flags in a standard review. But they raised flags for you. They raised questions which I addressed with Morrison. He provided explanations. I accepted them because you wanted the deal to go through. Because I trusted him, Marcus said sharply. Because he's been with this company for 12 years and had never given me reason to doubt his integrity. Because second-guessing every analysis and assumption would paralyze us from making any decisions at all. Evelyn stood and walked to the window. Below, the city was waking up, coffee carts opening, commuters flooding the sidewalks, the ordinary machinery of daily life grinding forward, regardless of corporate drama playing out in glass towers. There's a difference between trust and willful blindness, she said. Morrison gave you answers that were convenient, that allowed you to keep moving forward without uncomfortable questions. And because those answers served our goals, you chose to accept them instead of digging deeper. And a janitor asking about power usage is somehow more credible than 12 years of proven performance. Yes, Evelyn said, turning to face him, because the janitor had nothing to gain from lying. No deal to close, no bonus to chase, no career advancement tied to telling me what I wanted to hear. He just noticed something wrong and couldn't ignore it. That's not naivety, Marcus. That's integrity. Marcus was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice carried a weariness that went beyond physical exhaustion. What do you want from me, Evelyn? You want me to say you were right. That destroying billions in shareholder value was worth it, because it made you feel morally superior. I want you to be honest about what you're really angry about. Is it that I made the wrong decision, or is it that I made a decision you didn't have the courage to make yourself? The words hit their target. Marcus's face flushed, and Evelyn saw the defensive anger of someone confronting an uncomfortable truth about themselves. I have a responsibility to this company, he said tightly. To our employees, to our shareholders, to the thousands of people whose retirement funds and investments depend on us making smart decisions. And you just flushed that responsibility down the drain, because a janitor made you feel guilty about not noticing details. No, Evelyn said. I honored that responsibility by refusing to build our future on fraud. And if you can't see the difference, if you honestly believe that protecting our stock price matters more than protecting the truth, then maybe you should be the one considering resignation. The office went silent. Marcus stared at her, and she could see him processing what she had just implied, that his position, his career, his place in this company was now conditional on choosing the right side of this fight. I've given you 8 years, he said finally. I've helped build everything we have, and now you're questioning my integrity because I won't blindly support a decision that could destroy us. I'm questioning your priorities. There's a difference. Marcus stood abruptly. I need to think about where I stand on this and what that means for my future here. Take all the time you need. But Marcus, Evelyn waited until he met her eyes. Whatever you decide, make sure it's something you can explain to yourself in 20 years. Make sure it's something that matters more than quarterly earnings. After he left, Evelyn stood alone in her office and felt the fragile coalition she had built beginning to fracture. Marcus wasn't wrong about the consequences. The stock price was still falling. Major investors were demanding answers. Her board was divided, and she had just alienated her closest executive ally over principles that probably seemed abstract and naive to everyone watching this unfold. Her phone buzzed. Tom Reeves asking if she had time to discuss Noah Brooks's background check. "Come up now," she said. Tom arrived carrying a folder that looked thicker than a standard employment file. He set it on her desk with the careful neutrality of someone delivering news he wasn't sure how she would receive. "You wanted to know about Noah Brooks," he said. "So, I dug deeper than the standard background check. Thought you should know what you're dealing with." Evelyn opened the folder. Inside were documents that painted a picture far more complex than she had expected. Noah's wife, Emma Brooks, had died in a car accident 3 years ago. That part she knew. What she hadn't known was that the accident happened because she was driving to the hospital where Noah was wrecked, overing from a construction site injury. He had fallen from scaffolding, broken his back, spent 3 months in rehabilitation learning to walk again. Emma had been coming to visit him when she hit black ice on a rural Maine highway and crashed into a tree. She died alone in the cold while Noah was unconscious from pain medication, unable to answer her final phone call. He blamed himself, Tom said quietly. According to the hospital records, when they told him what happened, he tried to leave against medical advice. Wanted to get to her. They had to sedate him. Evelyn read through police reports, medical files, witness statements, saw the shape of a tragedy that had broken a man and rebuilt him into someone who made promises to ghosts. There's more. Tom continued, after Emma died, Noah lost their house, medical bills from his injury, funeral costs, no income while he recovered. He and his daughter ended up in a homeless shelter for 4 months. That's when he made the promise. Apparently stood up during a group meeting at the shelter and announced that he would never let anyone suffer alone if he could prevent it. Started giving away his own meals to people who looked hungry, giving his coat to people who were cold. The shelter director's report says he was concerning, like he was trying to destroy himself through self-sacrifice. But he didn't destroy himself, Evelyn said, still reading. No, his daughter stopped him. According to social services notes, she told him that mommy wouldn't want him to disappear too, that she needed him to stay, that promises meant staying alive to keep them. Evelyn found a photograph in the file. Noah and his daughter outside the shelter, both wearing donated clothes, both looking at the camera with expressions that tried to project strength but couldn't quite hide the fear beneath. The girl's hand was clasped tightly in her father's like she was afraid he might vanish if she let go. He got work doing day labor, Tom continued, saved enough for a security deposit on the apartment in Queens. Eventually got steady maintenance work, then applied through the service company we contract with. Every reference I called said the same thing. Reliable, honest, notices details that others miss. One supervisor said Noah once shut down an entire job site because he spotted a structural weakness no one else had seen. Probably saved lives. Cost the company 2 days of work, but they kept him on anyway because they knew he was right. And now he's cleaning floors in our building because it pays enough to support his daughter and the hours let him be home when she wakes up. He works 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. here, then picks her up from the neighbor who watches her overnight, sleeps while she's at school, spends afternoons and evenings being her father. Repeat every day. Evelyn closed the folder carefully. You're telling me all this because you think I'm making a mistake getting him involved in company operations. I'm telling you this because you should know who you're trusting. Noah Brooks is a man who's been through hell and came out the other side with a promise that governs his entire life. That kind of conviction is either admirable or concerning, depending on how you look at it. Which way do you look at it? Tom considered the question. I look at it as someone who's going to be absolutely honest, even when honesty is inconvenient. Someone who's going to notice things you'd rather stay hidden. Someone who won't compromise his principles for money or advancement or pressure, which makes him either your greatest asset or your greatest liability, only if we're afraid of the truth. Most companies are, Miss Harper. Most people are. That's why they hire people who know when to look away. Evelyn thought about Marcus's anger, about Mo, Rissen's fraud, about the board members who valued stock prices over integrity. Tom wasn't wrong. Most organizations rewarded people who maintained comfortable illusions, who smoothed over complications, who prioritized harmony over honesty. Set up a meeting, she said. I want to talk to Noah properly, not in a hallway at 1 a.m. somewhere his daughter can come too. I need to understand what this actually means to him before I ask him to be part of something bigger. You're serious about this completely? Tom shook his head slowly. You know this is going to make things worse with the board, right? They're already questioning your judgment, bringing a janitor into company operations, especially after using his observations to kill the Titan deal. They're going to see it as you doubling down on a mistake. Let them see it however they want. I'm done making decisions based on what looks good in board meetings. I want to make decisions based on what's actually right, even if it costs you everything. Evelyn met his eyes steadily, especially then. After Tom left, Evelyn spent the rest of the morning preparing her public statement about the merger cancellation. She drafted it herself, refused to let the PR team soften the language or bury the truth in corporate euphemisms. The statement was simple and direct. Harper Industries had discovered evidence of internal fraud related to the Titan acquisition. The merger had been canceled to protect shareholder interests and maintain corporate integrity. A full investigation was underway. The company was committed to transparency and accountability regardless of short-term financial impact. She released it at noon, By 12:30, her phone was ringing off the hook. Bloomberg wanted details. The Journal wanted interviews. CNBC wanted her to appear on Squawk Box. Every business journalist in New York wanted to know who the CEO was, who had chosen principles over profit. Evelyn ignored them all and called the number Tom had provided for Noah Brooks. He answered on the third ring, his voice cautious. "Hello, Noah. It's Evelyn Harper. Do you have a few minutes to talk? I'm at the park with my daughter. Can I call you back? Actually, I was hoping I could join you if that's all right. I'd like to meet her." There was a long pause. "Ms. Harper, I don't think. Please, not as your CEO. Just as someone who wants to understand what the promise you made actually means to your life." Another pause. Longer this time. "Then we're at the playground on 43rd and 10th, the one with the blue climbing structure. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Evelyn took a car service to Queens, watching the city transform as they crossed the bridge. From glass towers to brick buildings, from corporate headquarters to corner bodegas, from the architecture of power to the infrastructure of ordinary life. The playground was crowded with afternoon activity, children shrieking with joy on slides and swings, while parents clustered on benches comparing notes on schools and schedules, and the endless logistics of raising kids in the city. She found Noah sitting on a bench near the climbing structure, watching a small girl with dark braids navigate the monkey bars with intense concentration. He stood when he saw Evelyn approaching, his expression carefully neutral. "Miss Harper." "Evelyn, please. At least here." The little girl completed her crossing and ran over, flushed with accomplishment. "Daddy, did you see? I made it all the way across without stopping." "I saw, sweetheart. You were amazing." Noah's voice transformed when he talked to his daughter, the careful guardedness vanishing, replaced by warmth that made him seem younger, less burdened. Then he noticed Evelyn and his expression shifted again, becoming protective. "Lily, this is Ms. Harper." She was. Orcs at the building where Daddy cleans. Lily studied Evelyn with the frank curiosity of a 6-year-old. "You're really tall." "You're right. I am tall. Taller than Daddy. About the same, I think. Do you wear high heels all the time?" "Mrs. Martinez at school says high heels hurt your feet, but they make you look important." Evelyn glanced down at her practical flats. "Not today. Today I wanted to be comfortable." "That's smart." Lily nodded approvingly. "Daddy says comfortable is better than fancy. Your daddy sounds wise." "He is. He's the wisest person I know. He notices everything." Lily said it with absolute conviction, and Evelyn felt something tight in her chest loosen slightly. This was what mattered to Noah. Not corporate titles or recognition, but being wise and attentive in the eyes of a 6-year-old who had already lost so much. "Can I go on the swings?" Lily asked. "Sure, sweetheart. I'll be right here if you need me." They watched her run off, and Noah gestured to the bench. They sat together in the afternoon sunshine, surrounded by the sounds of playing children and parent conversations, and Evelyn felt profoundly aware of the distance between this moment and her usual world of board meetings and strategic planning. "You came all the way to Queens to meet my daughter," Noah said finally. "Why?" "Because I needed to understand what I'm asking when I ask you to get involved in fixing what's broken at Harper Industries. Your promise, the one you made to your wife, it's not abstract to you. It's your entire life, and I needed to see what that actually means." Noah watched Lily pumping her legs on the swing, building momentum, her braids flying. "It means I never make a decision without thinking about whether I could explain it to her, whether she'd still think I was wise, whether I'd still be the person she needs me to be. That's a high standard. It's the only standard that matters. Everything else, money, advancement, what other people think, it's all secondary to whether I'm keeping my promise to Emma, to Lily, to myself. The promise to never let anyone suffer alone. The promise to notice when people need help, to care when it would be easier not to choose being present over being comfortable." He turned to look at her directly. "You asked me last night if I'd help make sure caring about doing things right actually means something at your company. But I need you to understand I can't do that halfway. I can't notice some things and ignore others because they're inconvenient. I can't choose when to care based on what's politically safe. I'm not asking you to. You might be without realizing it. Corporate environments. They have ways of teaching people when to look away, when to accept explanations that don't quite make sense, when to prioritize smooth operations over uncomfortable truths. And if I get pulled into that world, if I start making those compromises, I become someone my daughter shouldn't admire. I break the promise that's the only thing holding me together. Evelyn heard the fear beneath his words, not of failure but of corruption, of becoming someone who knew better but chose convenience anyway. It was the same fear she saw in the mirror every morning, the question that had driven her to test him in the first place. "What if I told you I'm afraid of the same thing?" she said quietly. "What if I admitted that every day in that building I make choices about what to notice and what to ignore? That I've built a career on knowing exactly how much truth people can handle before it becomes inconvenient? Then I'd say you're honest about it, which is more than most people. But not enough. No." Noah agreed. Not enough. They sat in silence for a moment, watching Lily swing higher and higher, fearless in a way that only children who felt absolute. "Telly Secure could be my CFO thinks I'm making a mistake," Evelyn said. "Getting you involved, using your observations to justify killing a $3 billion merger. He thinks I'm letting emotion override professional judgment. Is he right? I don't know. Maybe. But I know that the professional judgment that was supposed to protect us missed everything that actually mattered. And the person who noticed, who cared enough to ask questions that no one wanted to answer, was someone everyone else had decided was invisible." "I'm not invisible," Noah said. "I'm just doing a job most people consider beneath notice. There's a difference. You're right. I'm sorry. Don't apologize. Just understand that if you want me to help fix what's broken, it can't be about making me visible. It has to be about making truth visible, making the consequences of looking away visible, making the cost of choosing profit over people visible. That's what actually needs to change." Evelyn thought about Morrison's fraud, about Marcus's convenient acceptance of questionable analysis, about board members who measured success in stock prices rather than integrity. Noah was right. The problem wasn't that one person had been invisible. The problem was that the truth had been invisible, and everyone had preferred it that way. "I'm going to lose my job over this," she said. "The board is already calling for my resignation. Shareholders are furious, and it's probably going to get worse before it gets better." "Then why are you doing it?" "Because I can't look at myself in the mirror if I don't. Because I'd rather lose everything than build success on fraud." Because she stopped, surprised by what she was about to say, but continued anyway. "Because I tested you to see if you'd keep a promise when no one was watching. And then I realized I was testing myself, too, seeing if I'd keep mine." "What promise did you make to my father when H.E. died?" "I promised I'd run this company the way he built it, with integrity that mattered more than profit. And I've been compromising that promise for years, telling myself that you have to be practical, that you have to accept reality, that you can't let principles paralyze progress. But watching you keep your promise even when it cost you everything, even when no one would have blamed you for giving up, it made me realize I'd been breaking mine." Noah didn't respond immediately. He watched his daughter jump off the swing mid-arc, land confidently, and run toward the slide. When he finally spoke, his voice carried understanding rather than judgment. "Promises are easy to make and hard to keep, especially when keeping them means losing things you worked hard to build. How do you do it? How do you keep going when everything falls apart?" He pointed to Lily, now climbing the slide ladder with determined focus. "Because she's watching. Because if I give up, if I compromise, if I choose comfort over conviction, she learns that promises don't matter, that you only keep them when they're convenient. And I can't teach her that. I can't be the person who shows her that giving up is acceptable, even when keeping the promise cost you everything. Especially then, that's when it matters most." Evelyn felt tears threatening and blinked back. She hadn't cried in years, not at her father's funeral, not during brutal board battles, not when her own marriage had collapsed under the weight of competing ambitions. But sitting on a playground bench in Queens, listening to a janitor explain why promises mattered more than survival, she felt something breaking open inside her. "I want to create a new position," she said. "Internal oversight. Someone whose job is to notice what everyone else misses, to ask questions that make people uncomfortable, to keep us honest when it would be easier to look away, and I want you to fill it." Noah turned to look at her fully. "That's not a real position. That's setting me up to fail." "It's only setting you up to fail if I don't support it, if I don't make it clear that your job is to find problems, not hide them. That your value comes from making us face uncomfortable truths, not from maintaining comfortable illusions. The board will never approve it. I'll make them approve it, or I'll resign and make it a condition of whoever replaces me. Miss Harper. Evelyn. Evelyn, you don't have to destroy your career to prove a point. You can find someone with credentials, with experience, with the ability to be ignored when convenient, with the willingness to compromise when pressured, with the corporate socialization that teaches them when to stop asking questions. She shook her head. I need someone who can't be convinced that fraud is acceptable, who won't accept explanations that don't make sense just because they come from someone important, who will keep noticing things even when everyone wishes they wouldn't. That's going to make me unpopular extremely. People are going to resent me, call me paranoid, say I'm overstepping almost certainly. And when that happens, when the pressure builds and people start demanding I be fired or reassigned or somehow neutralized, will you still support what I'm doing? It was the essential question, the one that would determine whether this worked or became just another failed experiment in corporate idealism. Evelyn thought about Marcus's anger about the board's division, about shareholders who measured her worth in quarterly earnings. I can't promise I won't make mistakes, she said honestly, or that I won't sometimes wish you'd found less inconvenient truths, but I can promise that I'll try, that I'll remember why I created this position, that I'll choose supporting honesty over protecting comfort. Even when it costs me. That's not very reassuring. It's the most honest answer I can give. Anything else would be a lie we'd both regret later. Noah smiled slightly, the first real smile she'd seen from him. Fair enough. Lily ran over, breathless and happy. Daddy, can we get ice cream, please? Noah checked his watch. It's almost dinner time, sweetheart. But I was really good at the monkey bars, and I didn't cry when I scraped my knee last Tuesday. Those are both true. What do you think, Miss Harper? Does monkey bar excellence and brave knee scraping earn ice cream before dinner? Evelyn found herself smiling. I think it absolutely does. They walked to a corner shop that sold ice cream and empanadas. Lily between them holding both their hands, chattering about her teacher and her friends, and a book about butterflies she was reading. It was achingly normal, achingly ordinary, and Evelyn couldn't remember the last time she'd done something this simple. When Lily got her ice cream, chocolate with rainbow sprinkles, she looked up at Evelyn with serious eyes. Are you Daddy's boss? Sort of. We work in the same building. Is he in trouble? Is that why you came to the park? No, sweetheart, Noah said quickly. Miss Harper just wanted to talk about work things. Good, because Daddy's the best at his job. He never misses anything. He even noticed when Mrs. Chen from downstairs was sad and brought her soup. Your daddy notices a lot of things, Evelyn agreed. That's because of the promise, the one he made to Mommy, that he'd pay attention and help people who need help. Lily said it matter-of-factly, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Daddy says promises are the most important thing, more important than anything. He's right. Do you keep your promises? The question asked with a child's directness hit harder than any board member's challenge. Evelyn thought about father, about the company he'd built, about the compromises she'd made and justified and rationalized over the years. I try to, she said, but sometimes I forget how important they are. Sometimes I need people like your daddy to remind me. Lily nodded, apparently satisfied with this answer. Daddy's good at reminding people about important things. That's why he's wise. They finished their ice cream sitting on a bench outside the shop, watching the neighborhood move through its evening rhythm. Eventually, Noah stood lifting Lily into his arms, even though she was probably too big to be carried. We should head home, it's almost bedtime. Thank you for letting me meet you both, Evelyn said. Thank you for the ice cream, Lily said sleepily, already resting her head on her father's shoulder. Noah met Evelyn's eyes over his daughter's head. When do you want to talk about this officially? About the position tomorrow. Come to my office at 9 a.m. Bring Lily if you can't find childcare. We'll figure something out. She has school. Then come after you drop her off. This matters more than normal business hours. Noah nodded slowly. All right, boo.